and I am the moderator today's event. Welcome to the 4th Annual Enterprise Exchange. Here in a minute, I'll introduce Mike, and he will give us a little more explanation about this particular event, but it is brought to you by Venture Call. Venture Call, you can see on the screen here, has a purpose to encourage, educate, and equip those seeking to live a purpose-filled life, which is expressed in their vocation. Mike accomplishes this through Venture Call on several weekly, monthly, and biannual events that he hosts. The most common one that happens weekly, every Monday, it rotates at different places, but on the second Monday, it is here with featured guest speakers, and that is the Abilene Startup Community, and that's in the spirit of encouraging. That's how that's accomplished. The Business Clinic is a once a year equipping event that is designed to bring in and help on the how-tos of business startups, business management, different topics like that. And of course, here we are at the end of the year with the Enterprise Exchange, and this is an educational opportunity that comes in for both profits and nonprofits. And again, I'll let Mike speak more to that in a minute. The thing I appreciate about the mission of Venture Call, and taking it even off of his website, he says that he wants to help people live consistently with their gifts and calling and be more engaged with their work. So it doesn't just apply to business owners, what Venture Call seeks to do. And I think most of us in this room, as I look around at the different faces and the different people that are here, I recognize we have kind of herd immunity, I think, to this, and it is the entrepreneurial mindset. So we've all kind of gotten infected with it for the most part, those of us that are here. And it's one of those things that you just don't want everybody to know about. A lot of times family, friends, that kind of stuff, it's kind of embarrassing if they find out that you've been infected with this entrepreneurial mindset. So this is a safe place, though, for you to share and be open about this idea of an entrepreneurial mindset. The thing about an entrepreneurial mindset is that you are not born with it. It is something that you acquire and can learn. It is something that affects your behavior and your decision making. I found an article by Ken Caldwell, and he summed it up to me very comprehensively. You can unpack the entrepreneurial mindset much more than this. But there's 3 things he pointed out that kind of encompasses it. Entrepreneurs are self-aware. They possess humility, but also tenacity. So it's that knowing when to ask for help and when you need it, and getting your ego out of the way, but also knowing when it's up to you to charge the hill as the tip of the spear. That is self-awareness. Mindfulness is understanding in the moment what needs to be done. And it's not being hindered by fear, that false evidence of what could happen. Not being hindered by that fear and not being able to make decisions. An entrepreneur is in the moment and knows, as well as not being tethered to their past or being defined by things in their past, but have flexibility in their mindset and being open-minded about who they are and that they can be transformed just like they are trying to transform the world around them. And then there's self-actualization. So they embrace their creative side. I personally am not super creative, but it's a skill that you can hone. And as an entrepreneur, creativity doesn't have to be artistry and painting and all of that. Creativity comes in simply finding a solution to a problem. There's a muscle to that of being self-actualized. So I liked Ken's summary of that because it encompasses so much more of what it is to be an entrepreneur. And so here we are today in a room of entrepreneurs that come from different backgrounds. We're employees. We are nonprofits, for-profits, government, all different kinds of backgrounds can embrace the entrepreneurial mindset. So next, I want to introduce the founder of Venture Call, Mike Myckworth. He has been in the people development business throughout his career that has spanned the private, governmental, and nonprofit work sectors. He too was infected with the entrepreneurial mindset that led him to founding the nonprofit Just People, as well as a for-profit window cleaning business called Clear Image. Much of his work is expressed in startups, program development, team building, and presentations to and for collaborative building of organizations. Let's welcome Mike Worth.
Well, welcome everybody. It's the microphone might help a little bit with the speaker, but one of the things that we're trying to do is we are trying to broadcast this to Facebook. So hopefully there's some people across the country who are going to be able to take advantage of what they're going to be learning and hearing today. But thanks for being here. One of the things that I want to point out on your bulletin, call it bulletin like in church, I guess, or whatever this thing is. On the back of it, it's got contributors down there, and I just want to acknowledge that the folks in these organizations that, because Potter's Pizza, they don't charge us for this room at all, and so that's one reason I come here. And so David's company, he was just up here, Small Business Outfitters, and they produce these bulletins for us, these programs. And so thank you, David. And of course, Ripple of Light, you'll be hearing from them. I think you see some of their handiwork up here. Allied and Jim Tallent's back in the corner back there. Allied actually brought funding instead of just in-kind contributions, and that was great for them to be able to do that earlier this year, and I wanted to thank Jim for that. And then Jim Clark, you'll see from Christian Service Center, and then of course Venture Call. So I just wanted to acknowledge those folks for us as we get started. Today's theme is called the blended business. I call it the blended business because my own background has to do with starting. In fact, the first business I ever started was a nonprofit, and then subsequent to that, other for-profits that are not near as profitable as some of you all sitting there. But nevertheless, I learned some really key lessons. You know, it doesn't take long to feel the pain of the pocket. And so anyway, the blended business, some of you have seen some of the advertisements, and of course we're featuring Ripple of Light. In my nonprofit days, the thing that I started seeing was that in starting up a business in the nonprofit world was very similar to starting a business in the for-profit world. You just have different revenue streams and so forth. There's variables in there, but you got to use a lot of the same types of skills. And what I've seen through the years is a lot of times there's not a lot of interaction between those two enterprises. And I call them enterprises because whether it's a nonprofit enterprise or a for-profit enterprise, they're enterprises. I think there's value in coming together, get to know each other, to have communication together, and you can learn best practices from each other. But trying to get folks together can be the challenge. So that's why we're assembled here today. And so I called it the blended business. So I hope that you will get to meet some other folks. We've got some nonprofit people as well as for-profit people. And we're going to go ahead and get into the program. The way it's going to be, well, it's all in here. And it's going to start with Ripple of Light, and Kevin Batten is going to be coming up from Ripple of Light and get us kicked off. And so Kevin, come on up. Let's give Kevin a welcome. Thank you.
The volume needs to be up to 64.
Have you ever been lost? I mean, really, really lost. Lost to the point if you couldn't find your way back, you were going to die. Not just metaphorically, but you would probably really die. Several years ago, and in fact, I'm going to give you the vicinity of a time that I was lost. And I'm going to get you there through the travel that I had to go through to get to this particular location. From my house on the south side of Abilene at the time, drove to Abilene airport, got on a airplane, went to Dallas Fort Worth, DFW. Got on a big airplane from DFW and flew all the way overseas to, I gotta stay stationary by now. I'm immovable. All the way to London. Spent about, 12, 13 hours in London, enough time to go do some sightseeing, get tired, rush back to the airplane, go to the tip of South Africa, to the country of South Africa, where we stayed maybe 4 or 5 hours, not a lot of layover time, got on another plane. This time was a little bit smaller. And on this was from Abilene to DFW to London, from London to South Africa, Johannesburg. From Johannesburg, we go to this very poor country called Zambia. And the capital of Zambia is Lusaka. So we land in Lusaka, and the first time I was there, my eyes were wide open. Different land, different country, different people. But from Lusaka, we get on even a smaller airplane. And on this particular trip, we end up in this little bitty community called Ndola. Don't ask me where Ndola is. I just know that we were there for about 30 minutes. And I remember on this particular ride praying a lot on this plane because I didn't know what kind of training the pilots had and getting the turbulence on this little bitty plane. But it turned out they probably got a pretty good pilot on this particular day, because right across the little bitty aisle, if you could even call it that, was this lady, and I could sense that she was somewhat important. And it turned out she was the president's wife. So she was sitting on this plane, and we land from Ndola to Zowezi. 6 airplane rides to get to where we were going. When we get out, it was quite fascinating, because what's usually done in the dark was out in the open. You had all of these witch doctors and these animistic spirit dancers that came out to welcome, not me, but the person that was right behind me when I walked off the plane, the president's wife. And I haven't experienced that before, and it was just quite fascinating. But from Zowezi, we get in a little Jeep, and we drive another 30 miles into the middle, literally. If you ever want to look where nowhere is, that's where we were at. And all of a sudden, this Jeep just takes a left turn, and we go another few miles on this road that had cracks in it. If you fell in the crack, they wouldn't find you for a week. And we go into this little bitty community. It was called the Mamina Christian Center. So we're in this community in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this third world country, no civilization. We are in the bush. And we're doing evangelistic work. We're doing benevolence. We had some doctors on this particular event, so we're doing some medical missions as well. And we were having a good time. But there was one particular day and I had been before. My friend Cam is the one that twisted my arm several years before this event. And I thought I was trained at being able just to kind of, they tell you don't go off by yourself. I heard that, but I've been there before. And we had gone on a hike the year before, and I wanted to go find this village that we found, because that was cool. And we had, I had this particular day off. So I got up that morning, and I went. This was fascinating. I went and read my notes back in this year, 2013, and I found all of my notes, and it almost brought tears to my eyes. Some of the things that we went through. But on that particular day, I got my little day pack, got some water, got some granola bars, and I was going to go on like an hour hike to go find this village. And I went, and they moved the village. I couldn't find it. And I kept looking and looking and looking, and then it was getting time to come back for lunch. So I started making my way back. I could not find where I was going. Guys, we're in the middle of nowhere in the bush, and I was lost. I was more than lost. I don't get scared that easily, but I started getting scared, especially when my water ran out and my food ran out, and trying to find my way back home. And I will always remember that. And in that particular year, I love what you talked about, entrepreneurship. My background is in banking. And I remember going to this workshop, and one of the speakers like we have today, he got up and he was talking about the conservative nature of bankers. And he said, how many of you would ever go bungee jumping? Well, of course, no big deal. I'd do that. How many would like to do level 5 rapids? Well, Cam and I live for that kind of stuff. Doing that in the Zambezi and another place. How many of you would like to start your own business? I'm the only one. How many would you like to go skydiving? How many of you? I'm the only one raising my hand to all of these high adventure, risk-taking endeavors. And I'm thinking, I'm in the wrong group. Well, eventually I had some plans, and I got out of that group, and I started starting companies. I had some experience in that, and so I started a limited partnership, and I had a sole proprietorship, and I started several limited liability corporations. I even started an oil company. My partner is doing very well today, but I didn't want to move to Dallas, and it was at that point in time when I say, what am I doing? So here I am, and had a lot of time to think on this hike, and I was not only lost physically, but I remember I'm trying to find my mission. I'm trying to find my purpose and to reconnect with what I need to be doing as far as business is concerned. And I get back, and that particular week or 2 weeks that we were there, it was jam-packed with neat stuff. Not only enough, I did find my way back. I'm here today. But I found myself, we were able to meet the King of Kings of Zambia. He came to our place, and we got to spend time with him, riding on the airplane with the president's wife, going and teaching and helping in so many different ways. Going to one of the local missionaries took me to this isolated village, and getting to speak at a funeral of a 5-year-old that had just died from a mosquito with malaria, and looking at the culture of how they handle that, and all of these really different experiences. And I wrote about all of this in my journal back in 2013, but there was one thing I did not write down, and it was this little bitty email that I got from a guy that I knew from a few years before, and he wanted to meet with me. He wanted to talk about mission and purpose and theology and things of that nature. And I said, look, and I normally don't even look at my emails, but I needed a lesson, so I had my wife somehow send me something that she's supposed to be sending me through the email, and I found this guy that sent me, hey, let's meet. I said, look, dude, I'm in Africa, and when we get back, we'll meet. So eventually we get back, and this email turned out to be the most significant part of the entire trip. It was just a 1 or 2 line email from my friend James Graham, and one thing intersects and leads to another. It blends into another, and we started talking, and both of us, in a metaphorical sense, we were both lost. And we needed to find our mission. So we had a full year where we just started. I'm more of the business side of things and having some experience with that. And James is the creative and has some wonderful gifts the best person that I know on the gifts of cinematography and photography and editing and all. So we kind of started just doing these demos. And we love theology, we love Christianity, we love sharing good news. So we just started doing this for fun and started sending things out. And it started going out all over the world. And one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, people saw what we were doing, and guess what? They said, we want to give you some money. And we also had an opportunity to do a couple of small projects. We were working, I had different businesses I was working on. He was working full-time doing other things. But we started a side project, and we called it, in fact, he had, just in a very loose partnership with a couple of guys, he had a company called Ripple of Light. And those guys kind of fell off, and he wanted to continue doing what he was doing with Ripple of Light, but move it forward. So in 2014, the following year, we started a company, an LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, and called it Ripple of Light Productions. But we kept doing these videos, and then we got other people involved that had a like-minded philosophy, and we started recording them, and then we started sending their stuff all out all over the place. And the first year, we had a church give us some money. The second year, a church said, we like what you're doing. We want to give you some money as well. So they gave us some money, and I started thinking, they're giving us all this money, but this is an LLC. So we're going to have the LLC, but what? There are people that have the same kind of passion that we have. They see what we're doing, and they want to support us in that. So the following year, because the money kept coming in, we began and started a new enterprise, which was Ripple of Light Ministries. We kept the name because there was so much overlap. And so out of the Ripple of Light Productions, out of being lost, and out of reconnecting with an old friend, an old acquaintance, and having shared values and like-minded mission, out of that, Ripple of Light Productions, and out of Ripple of Light Productions, we created Ripple of Light Ministries. And of course, on a 501c3, you need a board, you need others involved, and one of our biggest cheerleaders said, I love what you're doing, and he had more sense than we did in so many areas, being a little bit older. I think he had more sense because he's experienced some negative things also, and had the School of Hard Knocks. But Cam Hurst, who is our president of the board, kind of said, we need to do this. We need to form this 501c3, and he kind of led the charge of getting that structured and organized. So now we currently work with Ripple of Light Productions and Ripple of Light Ministries. So talking about the blended business, Mike, I think that's why we're here. Because we have experience on the production LLC side, and how does that blend? How does that integrate with a 501c3? And it happens to be we have the same name because of shared values, shared mission, even though there's some aspects that are separate as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for Venture Calls for inviting us to this event called the Blended Business. And for just the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you kind of more of we're not going to get into technical aspects, and I recommend you get with the technical experts on technical questions that you would have, your attorney, your lawyers, and things like that. But I want to look more at the philosophies and how a for-profit and not-for-profit can blend and work together, whether that's for long-term or short-term, or for one project or for many projects. And how do these blend together? Just from our own personal experiences. Some of these, when you come to these events, if you could even take 1 or 2 nuggets home, maybe it's worth the price. The food's great, but maybe that's worth the time that you have. Just getting some encouragement, getting some nuggets, and seeing how you can maybe even expand what you're doing and work with others that you may have not thought about before, whether that's giving or doing a particular venture together. The blended business, functionally integrating nonprofit and for-profit enterprises. You would tend to think that, well, those are complete opposites. The for-profit is, as the name says, for profit. I mean, that's what you're going for. You're trying to make a profit. And the not-for-profit, well, many people kind of, what is a not-for-profit? Is it means that you're not trying to make a profit? No, that's not. Jim can probably talk more about that, but no, that's not what it means. It just means that's not the primary focus. Your primary focus is more mission-minded on whatever that charter is that you're trying to accomplish. But both entities need the oil, the fuel, the money to run that organization, whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit. In the last several years, there's been these debates going back and forth, and I think the word would be conscious capitalism. And what does that mean? And back in the 70s and 80s, especially with Milton Friedman and individuals like that, they're saying, well, no, it's only for, the companies are created just for the shareholders and for the company and not necessarily for others. And you can take that profit and do with what you want to with the money. And there's some valid arguments on that. But as the millennial generation continues to have more and more purchasing power, and their mindset is more on mission-minded and issues that are important to them, whether you agree with them or not, but the environmental issues and the social issues that the millennials are so incorporated with, they want companies that actually have that mindset. So there's this debate going on with conscious capitalism. And I didn't even think about that because what we're doing, we're just doing what we want to do. And it turns out that, yeah, we are fulfilling our mission, not trying to appease the customers, and there's only 2 shareholders but in the board, but we're just doing what we have been called to do and not even engaging in that debate. So the for-profit and the not-for-profit, and when we say for-profit, many of you have different kind of business structures. Many of you will probably have just a DBA or sole proprietorship, doing business as. Some of you may have LLCs, limited liability corporations. And I have a DBA, I have an LLC, a few LLCs. I have a limited partnership. Ken Austin, my friend, is part of a limited partnership that I'm involved in with Capstone Expansion. And you can have, they have a new structure called a PBC, Public Benefits Corporation, which dictates you have something and you have to do some social good with that. And all of these structures, every one of them, they have some really good things about them, with good ways on figuring out the best tool to use for a vehicle to get you where you need to be. It's like a river, and you got to figure out which boat, or it's like a highway. You got to figure out which vehicle is going to get you to where you need to be. And in our case, we needed 2 vehicles. We needed a vehicle on the production on the LLC side, but we also needed a vehicle which was broader, worldwide on the ministry side. You know, my friend Jack Hardcastle, Cam and I and Jack and others, we love this game called disc golf. And Jack, he's one of the ministers where I go to church at Hillcrest. He's this big, burly-looking guy, and he drives this Harley Davidson. You know him, don't you? He drives this Harley Davidson. He's as nice as can be, but you don't know that until you start talking to him. When he goes places, he drives his motorcycle, and it does what he wants to do. It's relaxing. He can go. I mean, motorcycles it's a tool. It's a vehicle to get him where he wants to go. My other friend, Ken Austin, one of the things that he does, he doesn't drive a motorcycle, but because he has to haul a lot of kids around Abilene. He drives a bus. How would it be driving that bus, instead of driving the bus, him driving the motorcycle to take all that? You'd be there. I mean, you couldn't do it. So these entities are simply vehicles. So that's where you talk to the experts. Which vehicle is going to work best for me to get what I need on my mission to get accomplished? And that's what that is on the profit and the nonprofit. We're going to show you a video in a few minutes and kind of share with you some of our work that we've done. And some of it you won't be able to tell, is that for profit or not for profit? Because you could ask me and I could share it with you. But some of the things that we've done and that we're doing, we started out with doing short sermonettes with different preachers and personalities and sending that all over the world. We do live streaming events. In fact, we have a big event coming up in Austin. And don't tell anyone, but this group is our guinea pig for that. Not that we're wanting to capture this fantastic presentation that we're doing today so I can watch it every other day and you can have it at your disposal to watch it for the next 10 years. That's not what this is about. We're practicing for a larger live stream event. We saw this as a good opportunity. So we do live streaming. We do some live streaming for even some local churches. Our favorite is cinematic teaching videos where we do different things along those lines. We do documentaries, short films. We've done a couple of national commercials. We do some smaller stuff, Facebook ads. We do a church TV program with a local minister here. So those are the things that we are currently involved in and what we are and what we're doing. But I want to look at some philosophy of, and Mike, I really liked, this was not, I just like to be told what to do sometimes, and then other times that's part of entrepreneurship. You don't want to be told what to do. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. But to make things easier, I like to be told what to do, so I know what to do. I really like Mike's putting together the concept. It was just phenomenal. I mean, the more I thought about how you put these together, and I really dove into that in the last couple of weeks. But we have the blended business functionally integrating nonprofit and for-profit enterprises. And I started looking at that, and the word functionally, we think we know all about words and things like that, but the word functionally from the dictionary says of or having a special activity, purpose, mission, or task relating to the way in which something works or operates. It's in a way that relates to the purpose or use of something. So we connected that word with integrating, and the word integrating is combining of one thing with another so that they become a whole. Bring people or groups with particular characteristics or needs into equal participation in or membership of a social group or institution. One of the things that I think about that, functionally integrating, is not just with businesses, but if you really think about it, those of you that have significant others, in other words, it's called, the concept is called marriage. That is a huge aspect of functionally integrating. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the business side, just think about your marriage. You have two different, separate, complete, whole people, and yet you're going to be living, hopefully, the rest of your lives together, trying to figure things out and why you're existing and doing things together. That doesn't mean you do everything together. My wife doesn't want to do a lot of things that I like to do. In fact, the first year I went to Africa, and she knew the kind of risk-taking stuff that I like to do, she made me go get a $1 million insurance policy, life insurance policy, because she just knew me. And I did that, and then I couldn't sleep well at night, knowing that I had a $1 million life insurance policy on my head. Squirrel, I got sidetracked with that. But mission and functionally integrating together, it's blending, yet it is separate. And again, the best analogy for that would be a marriage. And I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but we have a CPA in the room, so I want to address this a little bit. I just met Justin a few minutes ago. He's going to help one of my friends, my brother, out, hopefully at one point understand some of these things. But there is and there has to be, with two different companies, there has to be separation. But at the same time, there can be some blending, and figuring that out is the job of one person to, okay, this goes over here, this goes over here. So it's not one account. But at the same time, there's so much overlap in working through that, and you can get so much more done when you're working together, especially with organizations that let's say you want to help with the homeless. You don't want to start all by yourself trying to figure out, well, what's the best approach? Well, go talk to Christian Service Center, and guess what? They already have the vehicle the tool to help you help them. And that's kind of the idea here. And it just turns out that ours is so connected, even with the same name. But I want to look at the functionally integrating. We read the definitions of functionally and integrating, but I have 4 points, and then we're going to watch a video. 4 points on this. The first aspect is I would like to highlight the aspect of like-minded mission. And I put up there the requisite of having a like-minded mission. It is very necessary if you're going to blend, whether that's a short-term mission, a one-shot mission, or a long-term mission. It is extremely important that when you're working with another group, another organization, another person, if you're getting something done, I mean, the word mission, if you think of M-I-S-S-I, don't think of Mississippi, but think of all of the other M-I-S-S-I words. What are some of those words? Just mission, missionary, missile. Things, so many times that root word is to be sent. It's something that you're sending out. There's a timeline involved. So a mission is being sent in order to accomplish something together. So when we're talking about different organizations, again, it can be short-term or long-term, but you're sending, you're doing this, but if you're going opposite directions, you're not going to be effective functionally integrating and getting the job done. I called one of the professors at ACU when I was going through this. I just wanted, he presents this kind of stuff all the time. I call him Dr. Phil. I should call him Dr. Phil Vardaman, but I just say, hey, Dr. Phil, because it's just funny to do that, especially when there's people around. Hey, I know Dr. Phil. So I called Dr. Phil up, and I said, what do you think about this? What do you think about this, mentioning this? And he teaches entrepreneurial class in the COVID department at ACU. And he said, I got a quote for you. And he said, when there is no hope in the future, there is no power in the present. It was good, Jim, but I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. How does that fit with a like-minded mission? And he said, Kevin, you got think about it. When there is no hope in the future, there is no power in the present. I said, okay, I'm going to quote that, and then I'm going to figure out what it means. He said, well, I stole that quote from Dr. John C. Maxwell. I said, okay, then I'll quote you quoting John C. Maxwell. So you can do that. But think about this. If we don't have a mission of some sort of hope, and Ripple of Light is about hope, because our mission is creating content through multimedia and video to share good news, and particularly in our belief, the good news of Christianity. That's our mission, and that brings hope. But if we don't have hope in the future, you lose the power in the present. And there's so much there. But number one is having a like-minded mission with those that you partner with. The second thing that I thought about on functionally integrating blended businesses is the magnetism of shared values. In my story of starting out with Ripple of Light, we did not go seeking funds. They just came from individuals in churches and organizations. But why would they come? Why would they want to just give to us? And I thought about that. They wanted to give to us because of the magnetism, the attraction, the gravity. They have a shared value, whether it's 10 shared values or one deeply held shared value that they saw that we had. They wanted to get on board and be part of what we were part of. We had already gone through some hard knocks and some experiences and what to do, what not to do. So individuals, the first time we received a check was for $29,750. And we couldn't spend it on ourselves. What did they tell us to do with that check? Anybody want to know? Go buy a decent camera. You have the talent. Go get a good camera and some lights. So what did we do with that money? We went and got a good camera. It was a 4K Ursa. We still use it today. It's not here, is it? No, it's not here, but we still use it today. It was a good camera. And at the time, 4K, whoa, wow, we got it going on. Now they got 8K and things like that, but you can't even tell the difference. We're recording this on a 1080 because some other stuff hasn't caught up with our technology yet. But shared values is so very important. Deeply held shared values draws people, groups, money, and resources together in order to achieve a common objective. That's my quote. Yeah. So that's what the magnetism of shared values is very, very important in blending these. And it could be for short term or long term, as I said before. Point number 3 on functionally integrating would be the benefits of divergent compatibility. Now think about that one. That's an oxymoron. Divergent compatibility? What are you talking about? Well, when you're working together, and this, again, go back to marriage, when you're working together, there needs to be compatibility. But if the compatibility is exactly the same, then you're going to have some weaknesses. Let me give you an example. The differences, James and I, you're going to see, and James is an excellent speaker, excellent presenter. I'm pretty good, but we're completely opposite. And when it comes to what we do, we are completely opposite. I'm getting better with some of the equipment and usage of the equipment, and they're starting to allow me to carry some of the equipment now. And on times I can push the button and I can record, and they're letting me do something because that's not my strength. But my weakness is not necessarily his strengths are not necessarily my weakness, but this divergent compatibility, not only in skill sets, but really more important in going back to shared mission or shared values and like-minded mission. Things need to be compatible. Otherwise, you're going to be with a group and you're just going to be butting heads the whole time, especially on long-term missions. In long-term projects. You can deal with things short-term, but if long-term, if you have 3 values that are overlapping, well, that's good. You have a particular project you're wanting to get done for 4 months or whatever, you can deal with that. But if you have a 5 or 6 year plan on a project and you only have 3 out of 10 values that are overlapping, you're going to have some problems. And you need to think through that. The last, and my quote on that, Yehudi Menuhin, he's passed away now, but he's probably one of the best violinists of all time. And you can Google him, and he's just phenomenal. But he made the statement, music creates order out of chaos. You don't have one note just over and over and over again. You have a whole range of notes, and putting those notes together is what makes the music out of the chaos. That is divergent compatibility. My last point is the governance of good stewardship. You can have all of these aspects in a business on both sides, for profit and not for profit. But our attitude, James and mine attitude on this is we need to be good stewards. Even if it was just our company, guess what? That money in the checking account, on one of my businesses many years ago, we had quite a bit of money in the checking account, and one of the co-partners said, "You know what? I need a new car." Well, that's no problem with that, except he took it out of the checking account. Within a week, we didn't have a company anymore. That was not only bad stewardship; it was lack of integrity. But good stewardship is very, very, the governance of good stewardship and running any company is extremely important. This quote, one of my favorites, Luke 16:10, "He who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much." And if you think of the word steward, a steward is simply a manager or a supervisor over someone else's goods or services in order to make an increase or a gain. So even if it's part of my money, it's really not my money anyway, because I have a partner. And even if it's our money, we see ourselves as stewards over that money. When one of our donors may give us a good chunk to do a particular task, now I want to be a better steward now than I did before, because someone has entrusted us with this partnership and wants us to make an increase or a gain. So now we're even more trying to be even better stewards with that. But that applies to all companies if you want to succeed, because again, I think this is a faithful statement, that he who is faithful in a very little thing, or trustworthy in a very little thing, is also trustworthy or faithful in big things. You start little, and you grow, you grow. If you look at the statistics, so most people that win the lottery money within 2 or 3 years, they're bankrupt because they were not able to grow with their possessions. And it was given to them, and they weren't able to handle it. So that's kind of how Ripple of Light, we're continuing to grow on a just a steady incline, not necessarily exponentially. And talking about good stewardship, several years ago on another trip, I go to Africa every year. This particular time was June the 10th, and I get a phone call. And this was the house that I lived in, and I had moved since then. It was a rent house, and I get this phone call and said, "Kevin," this was 11 o'clock at night, "Kevin, your house is on fire." "No, it's not." "Yeah, come look at it." Yeah, I did. And my insurance guy met me over there and said, "Kevin, these things take a while to work out. Go ahead and go." This year we were going to Zimbabwe. "Go ahead and go." And the house was still, luckily I had a brother, and he said, "Pat, I can't go unless you at least do some work so the city will let me go." So yeah, don't worry about it. I got it taken care of. So I was able to go to Africa, but this year, that was a year too. But from beauty for ashes, that's actually a scripture in Isaiah 61. Out of this house, and I got so tired of the house and the working with the city and the dynamics with the fire department and the insurance and all of these things took forever. I just was wanting to get out of the house at that point, and I have several other houses. So I'm just going to sell. I'm just going to sell the house, but I had quite a bit of equity in it, and I said, "What do I do with this?" And you may need to do this at one point, for those interested in real estate, a 1031 exchange, where you can take your proceeds of the house and move it into other proceeds without having to pay some of the tax consequences. So I did a 1031 exchange, and I got a twofer. I got not only another house, but I got a church building with this house. They said, "Kevin, are you going to start preaching into there?" Well, nobody would come. I'd only be by myself. So let's do something with this church building. So what we decided to do is make this church building into, and Jim, you haven't seen this yet because you were next door, but into a production studio. So we're in the middle. We're getting closer to probably 3/4, probably 3/4 done with the production studio, what you see next door in this church building. So the inside, I'm not going to show you the inside yet because I want it to be finished. You know, in Nehemiah, it took Nehemiah 52 days to build the walls around Jerusalem. Do you know how many days it takes to get a door from Lowe's? More than 52 days. They told me 53 days, and it was longer than that. But I want to leave you with this, and I'm going to show you a video. And this goes with the blended businesses, whether you're looking for something to work with, or even with your wife or kids or whatever. This is from ancient wisdom, okay? This is from wisdom literature, and it says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. And if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart." So where we are right now, we have Ripple of Light Productions, we have Ripple of Light Ministries, and what I was doing on one of my companies, DKB Realty, put that in there. A 3-fold cord is not easily broken or not easily torn apart. Those 3 things are creating, really, the idea of this production studio, and we'll see. We're going to be faithful on that. We'll see what happens with that. I'm going to show you a quick first video on, this is the Ripple of Light ministry side, and some of the things that we
talk to people around the world about Jesus. How do you get them to fit God into their day? One approach is to make it easy for folk to learn by going where they already watch and listen. We make it easy for people to find our videos and podcasts, posting them across Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, and other avenues, including our website. Why fish in one pond when there are so many other streams and lakes waiting? We are Ripple of Light Ministries, a nonprofit organization. We use podcasts, topical programs, and series to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ throughout the world. We mostly reach younger adults, people 18 to 34 years of age, a target hard to talk to in many traditional church ministries. We try to meet people at their walk in life. Some of our programming assumes little or no knowledge of the Bible, while others assume people are believers. We also use a variety of formats. Right now, podcasts are very popular. We have 3 airing at the moment, with more planned in the coming year. Our current podcast hosts are Chris McCurley with Dear Church, James Graham with Truth Culture, and Noah Davis. We have series that can walk a person through the story of the Bible, that can help them understand the nature of God and answer difficult questions. These videos are perfect for use by individuals, as well as by small groups, or to start discussions in a Bible class. There's no charge to use any of our programs anywhere. We'd encourage you to try our videos and to pass them along to others. People need to find God, so let's put God in their path. Let's give them messages that answer questions puzzling them. Let's give them videos that will catch and keep their eye so their ears and hearts can follow. Check out Ripple of Light Ministries on your favorite social media, or go to our website, rippleoflight.org. Let us know what you think.
All right. It's always awesome. All right. I'm making sure our audio is working. So let me get this out. So very much so what Kevin's saying, when it comes to a partnership, I'm what you would call a creative. And if you know anything about creatives, we're absent-minded, we can be scatterbrained, but whenever we focus on something, we try to make it, amazing and special. And the last 6 years, when you get into entrepreneurship and you're going to pursue a mission, prepare for some major suffering and heartaches, because you're going to have to learn a lot. And I've had to learn so much stuff the last 6 years, because it's not just knowing how to set up a camera angle, it's understanding all the settings behind it, it's understanding the audio, the lighting, when you're telling stories with video, how to set that up in order, working with actors, all these little things just start stacking up. And I look back at what I knew when I started. I'm like, how did I get here? And then I look at where we're going, and guess what? I still have to go through the exact same process again and again and again. But you never, ever stop learning. And that's one of the things that I love about this mission that we're on. And we're in an interesting time period right now where we're about to go into a new building and a studio and have the ability to do higher quality shows and podcasts, and kind of, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a news station here in town like K-Texas or K-Tab, but we're pretty much have our own little mini news station going on. And it's awesome just learning all the pieces that go in that. But also one of the things that we're about to do is not only are we, as we mentioned already, we're an LLC, but also we're a 501c3. And one of the things that we want to do with the studio is not just use it for us, but also open it up to the community as well. And so people who would like to do podcasts on their own, but would like to have higher professional quality audio, higher professional quality cameras, we want to be able to extend that to you guys, And so one of the things that I want to do during this time, Kevin, if you could, we're gonna pass around slips, because right now a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is not going to be ready until January of 2021. But we'd like to get some feedback with you.
if you could have 30 minutes in a studio with professional lighting, professional video, professional audio, how much would you be willing to pay for 30 minutes? Okay? If you just wanted audio only, how much would you be willing to pay for 30 minutes? And how many of you are comfortable doing your own editing and uploading? Because some people don't like to do that either, and we can provide that service as well, where we can upload whatever your content is for you on your sites. And when Mike reached out to us, I thought, well, this is a great opportunity because I'm in a room full of entrepreneurs, business-minded people, and I really would like to hear feedback from you guys. And please write it down on there, and we'll collect it from you afterwards. But your input is very valuable to us in kind of going into this next arena that we're about to approach. Now, one of the motivations early on is, and when I say Christian film, what do you guys normally think of? Do you think of Oscar caliber films or high quality? Usually Christian film is synonymous with cheesy productions, right? And one of the things that I've strived for, and you got to make all your mistakes early on, we're getting better, is I want to eventually get to a level of excellence where people can't distinguish with what we do and what's coming out of Hollywood or out of the streaming services. And I wanted to bring that as a vehicle to the church to utilize, because I want people to associate high quality production with the gospel, with the message. And doing that is a long process that we're in the middle of, but we hope maybe the 2 to 3 years to actually pursue making films. And right now we're getting all the kinks out, making our mistakes now by doing smaller projects. We take opportunities to do short films, music videos, all those things to be able to learn how to do it. And when I started off with just some friends with Ripple Light before Kevin and I started the LLC, we did weddings. We did whatever we could as little jobs. And you learn a lot from weddings because they're emotional. And you only have one moment to capture that kiss. You can't say cut, take two. You can't do that. You have one shot, you miss it. It's not going to show up in the editing bed. But seeing emotion and capturing that was a big tool. Making all of the mistakes on a bad shot, not understanding white balance. I've made a ton of mistakes. And right now, Kate, he's doing a wonderful job handling the live stream right now. But I encourage him to make mistakes because that helps him realize I'm not going to do that again. And that's part of the process of learning. The same thing with business. You're going to make mistakes. The question is that if your first business fails, are you going to give up or are you going to try another one? Because I guarantee you, if you start another one and you're not going to make the same mistakes, hopefully you won't make the same mistakes twice. So where we are right now is where we take contracts right now with World Bible School in Austin. That's one of our big contracts right now where we're able to do short films. And one of the things that's kind of popular right now, you'll see on the internet, is perhaps it's usually done with sermons where you have a preacher who's preaching and then you have cinematic footage over the sermon to kind of make it more appealing to the new generation. And we use that approach, but we have a narrator, we have scriptures. We open up with a little cinematic scene that kind of set the stage for it. And we've been doing a lot of those over the years. We're on a third series with World Bible School. So we're approaching about 30 videos that we've done over a period of 3 years that are about 10 minutes each. And that has taught us so much. We have to write the scripts. You send the script out. 5 people look at it and say, no, fix this. And I'll tell you one thing, being a writer or any type of editor, you got to get used to one thing. People saying, I don't like that, change it, over and over and over again, until you finally get to that edit or that, what they say, okay, that's what we're looking for. And if you don't like to be told no, or that's not good enough, it needs to be fixed, I'm sorry, entrepreneurship may not work out for you because you got to be able to take criticism. And video production, there's a ton of it. So if someone critiques me and says something, I don't get offended. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to get better so that I don't hear that again? You know. So this has been really a great training exercise. And one of the things that I've signed up early on with an understanding with Kevin is that I don't want the quick road to success. Okay, as he mentioned before, people who win the lottery, that's usually the worst thing that could ever happen to them. I had a friend in college at ACU, and she was down and we were talking, and I said, "You seem kind of depressed," and she's like, "Well, I'm not a millionaire yet." I'm like, "How old are you?" like 22 years old? I mean, you know, it was like, did you really think that you would become a millionaire at 22? And she's like, "Yes," you know. And she had this ridiculous high expectation of where she would be in life. And guess what happens when you have unrealistic expectations? You're going to be super depressed, okay? Because it just doesn't work out. Anything that's worth having, you have to earn it, you have to work for it, you have to obtain it, and you appreciate it. But at the same time, in the process of doing that, you become known for something. And people will see you as someone who is a professional in your craft. When I started off, you know, if someone called me a professional, I would be like, "What are you talking about?" Because whenever I looked at the stuff I did, especially when you look back at it, I see a ton of mistakes. You know, I'm not even comfortable being called a professional now. You know, but that is something I strive to be, is the best that I can be in the profession that I am, and hopefully, when I obtain enough, I can give back and help others on their path. Another thing too, when it comes to the Christian market, the church is learning how to do this stuff too. The church is learning how to do live streams, especially right now with the pandemic. I mean, if your church is not doing live stream, you're behind the times right now, you know. But the church is, for the first time, forced into social media, and I hope they start asking other questions, because if all that the church got out of this time period was we need to go on live stream, then they missed the point. How can you have a bigger presence on social media? What type of things can you bring to the table? You learned this, now go further with that. And I do think in the future you're going to see in more churches multimedia ministers becoming a more common position in more churches because of where things are going. And so I want to be in the front line, if I can, of going in that direction. Now, one of the things that I want to show you with this video is I kind of want you guys to see what we've done, what we have to offer, but also understanding that the best is, you know, yet to come as well. But over the years, I've got to meet a lot of people and work with people I never thought I would. And on the way, I've made some great partners. We contract with people all the time. We got people from Austin. We got people in Dallas, because it's really difficult to find really good videographers, cinematographers, and audio people here in Abilene for some reason. But Abilene is not known for the video production market, okay? And the reason why is if somebody wants a TV commercial, they think they're getting a good deal for $500. Oh, you're definitely getting a $500 commercial, okay? And when you watch TV, you can tell when it's the local market and when it's the national spot, okay? And so it's tough, because the moment you go, if you want a higher quality commercial, you better be willing to at least put in about $3,000, okay? But in the big leagues, there's commercials that are made for $50,000, $80,000. They go into the millions of dollars sometimes, depending on their CGI and everything like that. So the market here in Abilene, just because of the businesses that are here, there's a disconnect in understanding the importance of video, okay? And so whenever we do contracts with people, we're calling out to bring people in, and I get to learn from them. We share, we exchange notes. I find out what they use with editing, what's the latest thing they're working with, what's the latest tech, but we're always learning from one another to help get to a better level so that we can do that. Because everyone that I work with, I don't see any of them as arrogant, saying that they all have it. They all ask questions, they're always researching, they're always staying on top of the latest information. And if you know anything about technology, my goodness, everyone in this room probably has a camera, right? Okay, how many of you can make video right now? Okay, you can just put out your cell phone. And it's an interesting world that we live in, because everyone says, well, I have a camera, so I can do it. Yeah, you can do it, but that's because you have a video camera doesn't mean that you understand how to use it. The newest iPhone has 3 lenses on it, okay? For a close-up, mid-shot, far shot, all that kind of stuff. The technology is there. A similar thing happened with book companies and publishing companies when everyone could get a hold of Microsoft Word and they could type up their own books in the comfort of their home. That terrified a lot of the publisher companies. It's like, well, now everyone can write a book. It's like, well, you're definitely going to get a surplus of written material, but guess what's going to endure? The ones that really strive for a level of quality are going to stand out. And so, yeah, it's a bigger market now, but all the more reason to strive for a level of excellence to get to a different standard. I'm going to go ahead and push play on this so you guys can kind of see this is most of our stuff from the last 2.5 years when we were able to upgrade to more cinema quality technology, kind of move forward from that. So I'm going to press play. This is about 6 minutes long, and then afterwards we'll do some questions and wrap up real fast. All right.
This is a different campaign than what most of the high school kids would go on, because this campaign requires that they do a lot of preparation ahead of time. They'll study lessons and then be prepared to share their faith once they get there. So they're actually teaching children that come in from the bush churches as part of this youth campaign that's in Mumena.
Came time for me to actually get a job playing piano. I thought, well, this is just temporary, because I'm going to be a trumpet player. And then the longer I stayed here, reputation helps, or people got to know me, and especially since Crystal's was the place to go. I played for people back then. I played for their kids when they grew up. I played for their weddings, played for their grandkids now, and turned out I made a lot of friends. It was a great pace. I liked the friendliness, the atmosphere down here. I've left several times, but I keep coming back to Abilene. This is home.
Of the clouds, but the pavement's coming faster. It's all that we can do to keep on reaching for the surface of the earth, waiting for the heat to return. We all arise and we all fall. Oh, maybe the saint and the sinner are different at all. Both the priest and the prisoner are bound by their flaws. We all arise.
Is this because of Drew?
What? Drew? Affecting me? Well, you do call him Drew a lot. Why do you call him Drew?
That's his name.
Well, not technically. I mean, technically his name is Andrew. And you don't really seem like a nickname kind of person. I mean, we've been dating almost a year and you don't have a nickname for me?
Your name is Jack.
You could call me Jay.
Jack, we dated for like 3 weeks in high school. There's no need to be jealous.
I am not jealous.
World Bible School introduces a brand new social media discipling tool called Methodus. Methodus is a social network designed to foster spiritual growth among friends, small groups, and individuals that invites our world into a conversation filled with love and truth. Methodist has a variety of online courses that incorporate engaging videos, descriptive articles, thought-provoking questions, and meaningful discussion. World Bible School also provides Bible study curriculum that can be used in Bible classes or for home study groups, available in print and in digital formats. The curriculum parallels the online courses found on Methodist and are geared to help further your understanding of the Methodist material for personal study and to help you teach the material to others online.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to transition to the panel discussion.
Logistically, if you have a question for anyone on the panel, if you'll raise your hand and I'll come and repeat back the question for the panel for us to pick up the question on the microphones and everything like that. So it's a logistical thing. But if anyone has a question for anyone on the panel, just raise your hand and I'll get to you. Introducing our panel. Here we have Mike Mikeworth, that you've already been introduced to with Venture Call. He started Just for People, a nonprofit, and a window cleaning business that was a for-profit. Next to him, you have Jim Clark. Jim Clark is the director at Christian Service Center. He is passionate about helping people. You can see in your bulletin his bio there. He's been a Abilene staple in the nonprofit world for more than 50 years. And he is leading different initiatives right now with Christian Service Center, and some of them are looking at the for-profit along with the nonprofit. And then, of course, we have our featured speakers, Kevin and James, and you've gotten to know them through their presentations and videos. And so just starting off, does anyone have any questions to begin with? Yes, ma'am.
Ask them if they can do regular movies.
Okay. The question is, can you do full-length feature movies with your business?
No, because money. I think we would probably need at least $100,000 to pull off an actual movie production. So now, do we have access to people we can work with and build a team to make it happen? Yes, but to hold that together will cost a pretty penny.
Okay, so $100,000 would cover the equipment that you would need, or would cover something else?
A little bit of both. Yes, we would have to upgrade some equipment, but also paying those people for their time to get it done.
Sounds good.
Is that a desire?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's what you want to do?
Yeah.
So I guess let's just start off and go down kind of the line here. You know, why did you start or get involved in the nonprofit that you got involved with? And then also, I guess, kind of depending on which came first, but what's your why? What is your why, Mike, for doing Just People?
I was working in a government job and working with the youth, say youth 16 to 21-year-olds, and in working with them, they were what we'd call the at-risk population. The guys would have the ankle bracelets on, from, probation and so forth. And it wasn't unusual for the girls to have 2 or 3 kids from 2 or 3 guys. And so that was kind of the population. And as I was dealing with them, with this government organization, and we had good programming and lots of money, but I soon figured out that it couldn't really address the things that were causing the brokenness in them that caused these subsequent attitudes and subsequent decisions that they made. And I found that those young people were ill-equipped to live adult lives, And so in just my own private contemplative time, I started thinking about that, and there was just something that I wanted to be able to address the whole person, what I call body, soul, and spirit, And so as I was praying on that, spending time thinking about that, I will reflect on something I think Kevin said about money. One day after church, this was just starting to generate in me. And one day after church, I was talking to 2 or 3 guys, and I started talking about this. And while I was talking, this friend of mine took out a checkbook, for those of you that remember what that is, but a checkbook, and he wrote a check for $100 and handed it to me and said, I want to be a part of that. And I was flabbergasted because I didn't have a 501c3 yet. I didn't have anything but this that I was talking about. And all of a sudden, one thing that the Lord taught me was that vision materialized right in my presence right there. And it materialized in a way. And now I was responsible to that man for the gift that he gave me, And so then I started using, not on cameras, but I probably brought some, some stationery and that kind of stuff. So I think, David, the thing that I say about vision is that until you take one step of faith or step into the next, just take a step, all of a sudden things come by that you've never seen before. People come into that arena that didn't come into the arena back here. And I just started talking to different men's groups and Kiwanis and so forth. And I learned also that if you get a person, you get their heart, you get a person, then you get their resources. And so that alignment that Kevin was talking about when it comes, to mission and shared values was very much in play. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just speaking out of my own inner man of something that I saw a need that I needed to address. And I kept saying to my wife, I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I can't not try. And that was the basis, because I didn't know much of anything else, but I just can't let it go by. I can't not try. So
It's good. Jim, what got you involved?
Yeah, my background is actually, it's in film and video. Years ago, I grew up near Los Angeles, but became a Christian after college. And not long after that, I really felt a call to some sort of ministry, went to seminary, ended up out in this area where I met my wife. And so I've been involved in local church or parachurch ministry for since about early 80s. In Abilene, I was working for a media ministry for years, a writer, and I did kind of pastoral care over the phone, loved it. But they did budget cuts, lost my job in 2002. And when that happened, I heard about the Christian Service Center because my wife, she used to teach at ACU for years in social work. She heard through her boss that they're looking for a new director. And as soon as I heard about it, I started research about helping people in poverty. And I felt a great passion towards it. Why? Because I feel that God has a special place in his heart for people in poverty, people who are struggling. So, and I read a book while I was interviewing for that job and waiting called Beyond Charity by John Perkins. It's a tremendous book where he's helped people in poverty for years, but doing more than just handouts, but to develop people. And that's what I've done a lot with this ministry, try to move more towards development and less handouts, but also some for-profit stuff, entrepreneurship, and I'll tell you about that later.
Okay. Kevin, you've talked a little bit about your why, being lost and looking for mission and all. I guess one question I have along these lines is how did you know? I mean, what really cued you into that this was the answer to what you were looking for?
Well, I had been teaching and preaching at times before, being metaphorically lost. But when and I go back to what I said, when the compatibility and the shared values with an alignment of mission came about with James, and we didn't immediately, when we started talking, it wasn't month one that we created the for-profit, which led to the non-for-profit. It was about a year of us just doing things. And when working together in that period of time, let me know, what, I can continue to do what I'm doing, but there's so much greater exponential outreach by partnering with someone with the skill sets that he has and just having a much greater impact on the world instead of just going to a little class here, little church there, whatever, and partnering with that. So I kind of found myself back to what I wanted to do 20 years before.
And James, I mean, you've been in film, it sounds like, and all for quite a while. Had Ripple of Light before the LLC and all, but I guess even what's been your driving force and your why in this particular thing?
Well, I think it was about a couple weeks ago. Someone asked me, "What is your main gift?" If you strip away, because I've had to learn. You have to learn all these things. And I said, but what holds it all up is I'm a storyteller. But then, what stories am I going to tell, and why am I telling the stories? And what holds that up is my relationship with God. And so He's given me that desire to want to tell stories. And the verse I think Kevin had on there: "If you're faithful with a little, you can take very much." That constantly rings in my mind. And so sometimes you're doing something and it doesn't look like it's moving very fast, and I consider myself just be faithful with it. Because God's timing and your timing are not going to be, And so those things put together are what push me forward.
Good deal. Any other questions from the group? Well, let's just keep asking you all. As far as the getting started, and once you realized there was an issue or an opportunity, I should say, that you could help with and solve, what are the challenges and what are the things that you would want to share with other people to be aware of or to be inspired to overcome? So what were some of the challenges you faced specifically, Mike, I guess, with starting Just People?
Yeah, it was just not knowing what I was doing, but it was like, well, you have to do a certain amount of research. And back in that day, before, it was in the mid-90s, early mid-90s, and so I didn't know how to form a 501c3. I didn't know, but I'd been in the community for a little bit, and so I had connections. So I relied heavily on just talking to people, and then you just learn pretty much as you go. But the willingness to step out and do something that you've never done before, or something that you're not comfortable to do, was really critical, you know. And I think that's I was being an entrepreneur when I didn't know the word, you know, but it was in the social arena more so than it was in the for-profit arena. And so I think that's the main thing, is being willing to do some research and talk to people and put yourself in uncomfortable positions. I went and talked to lots of different groups and so forth as the word started getting around. And you can imagine when you're first starting, you've just got basically a concept, and we talk in entrepreneurship about proof of concept. So is this thing going to even work? I didn't know, but once again, I had to step out there, and it was amazing that people then connected, because they connect with something that's passionate with you. And the other thing I learned is people want to be associated with something that's successful. So when you see all this equipment and stuff, to me, I mean, this has been a growth process, but you know, it just causes me to say, I need to be even closer connected to these guys, you know, because there's a degree of professionalism and stewardship, and we're drawn to that.
Well, and I think to Kevin's point of like-mindedness and things, so finding people that support you when you're starting something and can go to as resource is obviously a part of their story and something very important. What are the challenges that you guys face, Jim?
Well, I've been over 17 years, and I realized pretty early on that we need to do more than just hand out to people. And one person that had a huge impact on me is a guy named Robert Lupton. This is one of his books. He's written Toxic Charity, and this is called Charity Detox. We had him come speak at one of our dinners several years ago, and I've had conversations with him. I've loved what he's done because he's a very entrepreneurial nonprofit leader. He's worked more than 40 years in Atlanta. But early on, he realized we need to do more than just hand out clothes or food. We need to give people an opportunity to give back. So they turned their clothing closet into a store and their food pantry into a co-op. And he used the point, use the market. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, some businessmen came to him and said, you need to start a store so people are giving back somehow. And that really got him on a track of how can we help people but let them exchange, let there be some exchange and give back. His book and his writings and meeting with him have had a profound impact on me. And the word that came about when you guys were talking was the word synergy. And I think nonprofits can be separate from business people or the other way around, but I love this idea of blending the two. And that's what he did. And so our small little blending was, we turned our excess amount of donations we get into a bargain room and started a store about 4 years ago. And when I was talking to Bob about this when he was here, I said, well, how does a nonprofit do that? He said, it's easy. If what you're doing is kind of under the umbrella of your ministry, you can do it. You just need to pay taxes and charge sales tax. So that's what we did. And it took off and made a ton of money, and it shut down some because of the pandemic. But it's been a great way for people to come. He says people appreciate a bargain a lot more than they appreciate a handout. And people love coming and buying things, and it helps provide an income stream to the service center. So that's something we've done. It's been fun.
Good. I'll address this to both Kevin and James and modify my question a little bit. But to me, what I'm curious about is you've started the for-profit, Ripple of Light, and then that evolved into a secondary vehicle, the ministry and the nonprofit, but you share, it sounds like, a lot of common resources. So I'm sure from an accounting standpoint in the IRS, you have two vehicles to account for nonprofit, which is kind of non-tax, I guess, and then the stuff that the government wants to tax you on for the for-profit. But how are those, because in some sense they serve different agendas or have different priorities, how do you reconcile the conflict? Maybe is there a conflict? I know you said you resolve that with like-mindedness and the shared values and all, but can there at their times not a conflict between having two?
No, that is a challenge, and one thing is we have to recognize the intent. So at the end of the year, and it comes down to good documentation. Document. Knowing what you're doing and how much time and money is involved in that, and then we can sort it out. But you need to do that to fulfill the obligations and the integrity on the business entity side for the IRS, because these vehicles that we are granted here in the United States are great, but we don't want to abuse those vehicles. And we want to be as good of stewards as we could possibly be. And there is a lot of overlap, but some of it may not be, just because our mission could go on either side because it's a similar mission. But some of the material that we present is for a nonprofit, but it goes directly to the for-profit because it's the production side. So some of it kind of works itself out and just on the intent of what we're doing. But there are times that where do we expense this and how do we justify the proper expense of that, and consistency and integrity and documentation kind of helps us through getting to where we need to be in case we are ever audited or have questions, and where we can sleep well at night as well.
Yeah.
Well, a good example of what he's talking about is we do videos with World Bible School, and that initial work is through the production company. But in the contract, they agree that after it's done, those videos can also be used by our 501c3 and .org can be used by our ministry side. So sometimes there can be some crossover, even though we made those in production, the ministry side gets to use them as well. And so those are examples of areas of crossover.
One of the questions that kind of keying off of this, I think, is that those shared resources, you do have to keep them separate for IRS and reporting and things. How do you know when to do that? And it's almost that symbiotic relationship of how much does one depend on the other. And so how do you do, and if I do your question justice, is it just a kind of a default that you know how much is going, the equipment that's going to be rented, the equipment that's going to be charged off to the for-profit but used for the nonprofit? How do you decide that priority?
At the beginning, we try to see if this is going to be primarily for a podcast, well, that's going to be on the ministry side. Now, there are times, though, where it can bleed over, and we need to use that equipment on the production side. So how do we do that? And that goes back to documentation. There comes a time of reconciliation. So there may be a time where the production side needs to pay the ministry side to keep everything separate but blended. And that's the best way to do it. But without proper documentation, you're going to have a difficult time doing that. So when you come in and on every podcast or show that we're doing, or if we take it when it's used in a different, for a different purpose or intent, that's when we need to document it, saying, okay, we need to make sure that company A benefits for the usage of that equipment or whatever. So that's the best way to do it. But for the most part, we do have separate types of equipment. And if we're doing it on the production side, well, we can just give it, there's not a problem helping out the ministry side because that's the 501c3. The problem comes in if the ministry side equipment is benefiting the production side. And that's where we need to reconcile and have different periods of reconciliation to make sure that they're being justified and allowing us to use that equipment.
A piece of equipment that's very difficult to determine is the computer. That's my computer over there. I do stuff for ministry and production on it. So how do you splice that? And that's why I let him worry about it. I just worry about the creation stuff and the building, and I let him, lose some hours of sleep over it.
Yep, that's a good excuse when you're the creative, right? Well, and I think, one of my understandings is that with a nonprofit, there's not really the asset and the equity aspect that you have with a for-profit. So you can't just sell off your nonprofit to another entity or person to take it over and then they've bought assets and all of this stuff. I guess you can liquidate a nonprofit, but you can't sell a nonprofit is my understanding, versus a for-profit you can. And so you have this synergy to me even of an asset that a nonprofit really has part of. And so there's seasonality and all, like you've spoken to, Kevin, is that maybe it's for a time that you have the for-profit and everything. Would you agree that that's your nonprofit when you have a blended business like that? Probably because that's the heart of your mission and your purpose. Is that going to have more staying power?
That's a great question. We don't know. But the nonprofit, the for-profit has most of the assets, so to speak, and the not-for-profit has more of the partnering and the people that are part of that. So the mission and the world, the global aspect really comes from the nonprofits. But yeah, everything that we do, normally we have contracts, especially when we're working with groups. So it can be difficult to sort out, but it's not as difficult as people think, because we normally have a contract that spells out exactly what we're doing and who's doing it. And having written documentation up front with what we're doing makes it easier on the back end. And only if we change during that course do we have to reconcile.
And the board on our 501c3 often knows what the production is doing, because there's a lot of like-mindedness behind the projects. And as a result of who's behind the production side, there's projects that we will gladly say no to. Yeah. Okay, because if we don't feel like our values and we don't feel like that's something that God uses, and that's okay, we're not going to say yes. And I don't care if it's $1 million check. Okay, I will not do it. And so we have limits, and those limits keep the materials that we make kind of in harmony.
One thing I failed to mention in the presentation is transparency. Our board, which is the non-for-profit side, knows exactly what we're doing on the for-profit side. So we're not hiding anything. In fact, the president of the board was here on the non-profit side. So we let them know these are the projects that we're doing. And if they have a disagreement with a project, they can exit, and we will, by law we don't have to, but we will respect their decision and not do, even if it's a for-profit. So we want to keep that synergy going and not disrupt that.
I think we probably have one more, but we're going to wrap this up here pretty quick to honor everyone's time. We are up against the time.
I just want to know how you can say no to things. So are you telling me you don't take any government dollars, which is why you're able to say no to things?
We do not take any government dollars.
Got my attention, did good job.
I'm just going to ask this last question of how do you all know, you talk about shared values. How do you determine that? Obviously, you have to know your own values, but do you have that very specific question that you ask, or how do you go about determining your shared values?
Is that to us?
Yeah, well, to anybody on the panel.
One thing we do, we continually I try to restate our mission over and over to our staff, in our media and Facebook and so on, that we're about sharing the kindness of Jesus. That's our mission. And so if we keep repeating that, and those who want to buy into that will join us and support us financially and pray for us, and others don't, well, they'll support
Self-select
something else.
out, yeah.
To me, that's really important.
I just use observation. What somebody does is much more important than what they say. And so that's really the thing that I look for, in my friendships and the people that I counsel with, that I take advice from, then I want to know how their life is, and so it kind of goes to the transparency issue that Kevin was talking about. So I think the shared values, we all have feet of clay, right? That's right. We all stumble, we all make bad mistakes and so forth, but what you do with those is what makes all the difference, and how you respond to your bad mistakes, your errancies.
That's good.
Kevin, James, any thoughts there?
Yes, spending time, I love Jim and Mike's answer, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, but just spending time with people. And, if it's going to be, if you're forming an LLC with someone, you better have a lot more shared values let's say there's 10 points, you better have 9 out of the 10, if not all 10 together. If you're doing a one-time project, well, 2 or 3 or 4 would be okay on that particular shared value to get that particular mission done. So a lot of it has to also to do with, is this just a one-time deal and we agree on this one issue, so we're going to help on that? Or if this a partnership that's a long-term, sometimes it's easier to get out of a marriage than it is a partnership. So we want to make sure that those values, especially if we're putting a lot of stuff in writing, that and I don't recommend either one,
but to put things in writing, you don't recommend getting out of
a
marriage or a partnership,
Yeah.
right. But you can get
But things happen,
Yeah.
and it's difficult. But if you do more legwork on the front end, then you can help alleviate problems on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts? We're good? All right. We appreciate the audience's time and your participation, and our panel's time and our speakers. So let's give everybody a round. And I think this is very valuable time spent just educating, understanding the idea that there's different vehicles. I think at the end of the day, along with the fact that it's not just millennials. I think that they're leading that charge, but I think on the heels of, Enron's the best example I can think of, but corporate corruption, government corruption, all these things that our society's losing trust in institutions, and so they're looking for people that lead with values and heart, and they put their dollars where their mouth is. And I think that this idea of blending a business so that you demonstrate that with your money in terms of a nonprofit, but having that vehicle of a for-profit that a lot of times drives productivity with people and things like that too. So very much appreciate this opportunity to learn about the blended business, and hope you all have a blessed day, the rest of your day as you go out. Thank you. Thank you.